This interview is an excerpt from a longer interview I did on August 21st with Tim Buckley, who is the founder and director of Australian think tank Climate Energy Finance. Now, he's traveled widely in China and meeting with companies and government officials over the last 5 years. And Tim says that the growth of the Chinese clean energy technology and its adoption within China is staggering. You have to see it with your own eyes. And more importantly here, from a Canadian point of view, because we are assuming that there's going to be demand for oil in China, he said the Chinese are deliberately electrifying transportation to reduce the amount of oil that they import. And here's the kicker. Other nations are now beginning to follow China's example, and they're adopting cheap Chinese clean energy technologies like EVs and heat pumps to do it.
Good to be here. I appreciate your interest, and I am an absolute bull on Asia and in particular China. It is just fascinating to sit in Australia and watch the dramatic ongoing growth of the Asian century.
Okay, well, that's a good place for us to start because the reason I requested an interview with you is I read a trade magazine article about Malaysia. And Malaysia has, over the last 2 years, adopted policies, a very deliberate strategy to electrify. So they're going to increase their wind and solar on the supply side, grow their power generation, and on the demand side, they're going to promote electric vehicles, electric transportation. And what they want to do very deliberately is displace their oil imports, which are about $13 billion dollars a year. And it occurred to me that Asia takes 57% of all imported oil in the world. And if Asian countries began to adopt those kinds of policies, that would make a big dent for export countries like Canada. So maybe just give me your general take on that kind of a strategic approach.
I think it's spot on, and it's worth bearing in mind the International Energy Agency did their global oil update about 2 months ago. They didn't materially change their global demand forecast for oil. They tempered the growth rate forecast, but they didn't change the total. It was rather ironic. What they highlighted was that America would probably consume a million barrels per day more oil over the next 4 or 5 years than they had previously forecast because of the Trump administration undermining the momentum towards electric vehicles. But that was entirely offset by the fact that they downgraded their forecast by a million barrels per day for China. And when I'm not studying the Australian energy system transformation, I am studying China. I've been studying and investing and uh, traveling through China, examining their clean tech sector for 15 years, and it's nothing short of staggering. But the key point the IEA made was China is electrifying absolutely everything. They are moving world-leading speed into electric vehicles, and therefore they are dramatically, permanently reducing their oil demand.
Here's some interesting information, and I want to get your take on it. Last year, China bought 17.4 million barrels of oil a day, imported it, consumed it, sorry, because not all of that is imports. And if you look at modeling done by Chinese agencies, and I'm thinking of Sinopec, the big state refiner, I'm thinking of China National Petroleum Corporation, and then there's a unit in the Peking University that does modeling. All of those say that by 2050, just 25 years from now, China's oil demand will decline to 7.5 to 5.5 million barrels a day. That's, a third to 40% of what it is today, which seems astonishing. But what's your take on? Do you think that China will achieve that?
Yeah, I focus more on electricity than I do energy, but I did have the privilege of meeting the top energy modeler for the National Development Reform Commission of China. So it's the peak energy authority in China about 2 weeks ago, and he put up a chart, and the chart showed China's energy imports peaking by 2030. And I actually pulled him up and said, "Hey, peaking. Like the Chinese economy is growing at 5.3% year on year in 2025. The Chinese premier have a target to keep growing the economy at 4 or 5% per annum for the next 20, 30 years. And here they have total energy in peaking as soon as 2030. That's even far more bullish than I am on China's energy system transformation. He goes, oh, Tim, don't forget, you're looking at a chart of energy in, not energy out. One of the reasons why China is pursuing electrification of everything so aggressively is you need a third of the energy when it comes from wind, solar, hydro, or nuclear than you need in terms of energy in from a coal plant, because a coal plant only has a thermal efficiency of 32, 35%. But peak energy demand, energy in demand by 2030, that is a staggering number, way ahead of what any Western forecaster is saying.
And I would assume that a lot of that has to do with modeling, or let me back up a little bit. We've done some interviews with Professor Nick Eyre from Oxford, who talked about how that once you adopt electric demand technologies like an electric vehicle, your efficiency improves by, a factor of 2 or 3. And so his analysis shows that even though you might use 2, 3, 4, 5 times as much electricity, your energy use actually goes down because it's so much more efficient than an internal combustion engine, for example. And I assume that that's the process that's going on in China.
Absolutely. And what I look at is energy out and useful energy. So exactly what you said, like when you burn coal, you lose 2/3 of the energy unless you're actually doing heat recovery and then you're putting that into a district heating system or using it in your industry, which China does do. But the idea that peak energy in China, the biggest energy consumer in the world, and at the same time, we've got the fossil fuel industry saying, oh, the Paris Agreement's dead. We can't solve the climate crisis. We're not the problem anyway. They are the problem, and the Paris Agreement is not dead. It's just pivoted to being solved by the greater Asian region rather than by America and Europe and Australia and Canada, as was the original expectation. But energy efficiency and electrification is a massive, massive driver of the Chinese thinking and the Chinese modeling. And you couple that with the rollout of wind and solar in China at a rate that is beyond anyone's forecast. Like I've been forecasting energy investments in China for 15 years, and it's beyond any forecast I've ever made. And I'm one of the global bulls on China. Their solar installs are up 100% year on year in 2025 year to date.